Hi there, Gary. I'm just sitting in a park in Nantwich in Cheshire and thinking about that my most recent exchange. I suppose the bit I'm still kind of locked on, and the bit that's haunting me a wee bit, to be honest, is this last bit, which is to do with Shakespeare and hundreds of thousands of years of suffering, which is really to do with this. I mean, you have this little story, you know, where you make this wind-up toy that you set on the porch, and this wind-up toy goes through the world and kills thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of creatures, but at the end of it, it manages to produce Shakespeare's plays. We ask ourselves, is it worth it? Well, of course it's not worth it. And yet we seem to forgive evolution for doing that. You know, for all of the difficulties that the world has suffered for the last God knows how long, really, and all the creatures that have died in order that we might be here right now, as if it mattered, really. And often the justification of that is, as you rightly point out, things like art or literature or music. Is it worth it? And you know, by the same mathematics, by the same economics, no, you pretty much have to say it isn't. But I don't think you can stop there, really. I think as soon as you make that evaluation, as soon as you say, okay, I'm evaluating thousands of years of horror against, I don't know, a few examples of elevated culture and the kind of kindness and compassion and empathy and all those kind of things which we'd perhaps think about valuing alongside Shakespeare's plays. As soon as you do that kind of economics, then you're kind of forced to stay with the economic model, and a series of questions follow from that. If you say that it's not worth it right now, if that little bit of poetry isn't worth all that suffering, then the follow-up question is, how much poetry would be worth all that suffering? You know, how many plays of the standard of Shakespeare, how many Beethoven symphonies, how many Damien Hirst diamond-encrusted skull artworks, how many poems, how many beautiful works of architecture, and all of the other stuff, you know, how much beauty and kindness and care and compassion and love and fellow feeling and forgiveness and respect and all that kind of stuff. How much would we have to generate in order to pay back the debt that we owe, or that evolution has stacked up for us? Is that a fair thing to do? Because if we're saying it's not, if we're saying that we can't make that kind of judgment, or we can't make that kind of an evaluation, then the comparison is invalid from the start. We can't do the wind-up toy killing people model. We can't run that simulation and pretend it works. We either have to do one or the other. If we do say that there might be a calculation to be made there where we're balancing suffering and in order to against the potential for beauty and kindness, then you know, that puts us in debt, really, I guess, or it gives us a hell of a responsibility to think about. It puts us, well, I think it puts us right at the brink of beginning to pay that debt back. You know what I mean? It's a bit like the economic crisis right now that we seem to have saddled our children with for the next 100 years. It seems like there's a similar kind of calculation going on in terms of evolution, that all those millions of years have saddled us with this debt of, not exactly guilt, but of negative energy or something, of negentropy, of horror, that it's fallen on our shoulders to begin to pay back. Now, I think a lot of people would say we can't, and that we are doomed to failure, and we'll always be backsliders, and we'll always be bad, and we'll always be pulled back towards the urges that create the horror in the first place. I'm slightly more optimistic, and I think there's some evidence to support my optimism, but it is quite a daunting prospect. Anyway, I hope that makes sense.